Okay, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting. Tonight is Tuesday, June 23rd. This meeting is being recorded for Whitman Hanson Cable. It is being held virtually in accordance with the governor's orders. We have done a preliminary roll call prior to starting this meeting, and when we move into the meeting and we are taking votes, the votes will be done by roll call so that there's clarity on the vote. With that said, I hope you will please all join me in pledging allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. And with that, Mr. Bloss, I will turn it over to you for our announcements.
We have only two announcements tonight. The next Selectmen's meeting will be next Tuesday, June 30th at 6 p.m. We hope to see everybody at the elections this Saturday and come to the polls between 10 and 5. Do your civic duty and vote, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you. First up on the docket, we have got, we have it as new business, but I feel like we've discussed it a few times. Sean Keeley regarding town meeting logistics. So Sean, has Kenny had an opportunity to speak to you? I believe he has, about an idea that he had and all of that. You're on mute right now, Sean. Kenny had called me last week, and he had a great idea in terms of cost efficiencies and just overall efficiencies, thinking about the fact that Whitman was holding their town meeting up at the high school, and that everything would be set up for that. And that the graduation was going to be at the end of that week. Kenny said, why don't we try to put ourselves in the middle, and then that way the setup for all involved and the cost for all involved would be that much less. So with that, Mr. Keeley, if you want to kind of take it away and talk about where we're at and what your thoughts are on all of that.
Well, sure. Thank you very much, Laura. Yeah, you're right. Kenny had a terrific idea, and so we've been following up on it over the last couple of days. And the idea is to kind of piggyback onto the graduation for Whitman Hanson High School, which they're planning on holding out on one of the fields, setting up many seats along with a couple of tents, porta potties, a lot of facilities that would be needed for a town meeting. Whitman hasn't decided yet what exactly they're going to do, and Mr. Simonak can probably talk to that a little bit more. But the potential is there for them to hold their town meeting on Monday using all of that equipment, holding out Tuesday as a second day for their town meeting, just in case it runs long or there's a rain date. Then Wednesday, we would take over the area, hold our town meeting, with Thursday being a rain date or a carryover day in case we go long, although I don't anticipate that.
And are we talking about outside, and is there talk of a tent, or what's that type of situation looking like?
Yeah, the way that we're working out, I know in the past I talked about getting a large tent, but that doesn't seem to be part of the plans right now. So that makes it a little more necessary to have that Thursday built in as a potential rain day. Mm-hmm. Getting a tent that big for the amount of seats that we're talking about would be difficult, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What we're looking at here is that we would be able to socially distance about 500 people, 600 people even, out in that field in case we had that many people. And remember that when we had a contentious school issue several years ago, we had over 1,000 people show up to a special town meeting at the high school. And so this would allow us to handle a tremendous number of people, much larger than our typical town meeting, something that's forecast by Ms. Sloan, the town clerk. And, you know, and I fully hope that many people will show up. That'll mean that many people are engaged in what's going on. But this would allow us to do things safely, I think, than going inside. It would allow us, it'll be different, and it may be a little warm. It may be humid. But I think that we're going to be able to take care of things as best as we possibly can, and as safely as possibly as we possibly can. The idea would be to spray for mosquitoes ahead of time, have the facilities, have tents set up if people needed to cool off or to get something to drink, have the stage area set up in a manner in which people are properly distanced. So what we would anticipate is that it would be me, perhaps Ms. Federoff as legal counsel, the town administrator, Mr. Stanbrook, and the selectmen, but have a fairly limited stage set up, have the other officials close to a microphone. But all of the sound equipment would be there for the graduation, or would be available. So this really is a very efficient way to do things, a very safe way to do things.
And what about ADA compliance? I'm sure you've thought about that. What's the plan there?
And Mr. Simonak can talk to this a little better than I can, I think, but Beth Sloan and I were up there this afternoon, and Mr. Simonak gave us a terrific tour of what he had envisioned for graduation. And that, of course, was an issue that came up. And there's a couple of different ways we can handle it. We can either have people who are handicapped park on the field itself and then enter with the clerk's table set up there, or we could build a ramp that would allow the proper grade at another entrance that would allow people to come in who needed an easier grade to get in.
Okay, great. Mr. Simonak, and thank you for working with us on this and everything that you work with us on, but thanks for working with us on this. So what were your thoughts on the ADA access and all that?
So when we toured it today, I mean, we're looking at making sure it's compliant for all our guests on July 31st. And like Mr. Healy said, there's an opportunity to build a ramp so people who are physically challenged can use that ramp as a grade, or we might have their cars escorted on the field by local authority, by the police department, so that they have full access to being able to attend town meeting. We were thinking of having a cooling tent where folks, if they were a little bit too hot, were able to go and be under the tent. A large tent to cover that area wouldn't be feasible, especially for that length of time. But the challenge for us is going to be power for this stage, which we're working on right now, and then the audio equipment. My concern, and this is for that entire week, is we rent out the audio equipment, and I want to make sure it's safe and portable. So it'll have to be broken up and taken down. If Whitman decides to use it on Monday or Tuesday, they have yet to decide if they're going to be indoors or outdoors. But the field we can set up is the JV baseball and freshman baseball field adjacent to the football field. The staging, as Mr. Keeley said, we've already mapped that out. We will only be able to have 7 people on stage, socially distant. And then we'll have 300 chairs socially distant for our graduates. And then we're looking at close to 1,200 to 1,500 chairs socially distant on that field. So if you get everybody in the town of Hanson to come out and be at that town meeting, we should be able to accommodate them. But the ADA piece is in Ernie Sandlin's hands. I have full confidence, and he'll be able to work with that. We will have plenty of parking for everyone, both in the lower lot and the upper lot of the high school. And then we will rent those porta potties for folks for facility usage. My concern, and Mr. Keeley and I spoke a little bit about, is darkness. So making sure that you adjust your start time. Normally town meeting starts at 7. I would advise to start a little bit earlier. It will be getting dark between 8:15 and 8:45. That's when dusk gets, and we have to be mindful of those mosquitoes. We will have it sprayed. We've done that past before events outside. So we'll have that sprayed for the week. And I would advise that the town has bug spray on hand, like we do for night football games and things like that, just to be mindful of that.
And so thanks, Jeff. That's super helpful. And so Sean, as far as I mean, we're saying outside, whether Whitman does outside or not. That's what your kind of like thought process is, right?
That's my strong preference.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it will make people a lot more comfortable to be outside rather than worried. You know, even in a good, large, ventilated place, it's still going to give people a little bit more comfort being outside, I think. As Jeff said, it's going to limit us a bit that night. We're not going to have lights, so things will get dark. And I plan to tell everybody, you know, we'll start earlier, I hope. If we can start at about 6:30, and then we'll say there's a hard stop at 9 o'clock. And, you know, I think and we'll talk about this with Kate in a little bit, I think, you know, if we structure the town meeting properly to get things, non-controversial items, we can devote a decent amount of time, a significant amount of time to the debate that people want to have. I believe that would give us enough time where people could get their arguments out. Perhaps we won't have as much repeating as we in past town meetings, but on the other hand, all the arguments should get put on the table, and we should be able to have a vote before it gets dark. And then, you know, if it doesn't happen, there's always the possibility of coming back on Thursday.
Okay, and so you're saying about 6:30. Obviously, we want to be sensitive to people that have to commute, even though the vast majority of people are commuting from their home. But there's still people that do have to commute further than that. And okay, so that's helpful. And if we have to spill over into another night, we spill into another night. Eric Dresser and I were talking about a separate issue from, Eric is, of course, the director of Whitman Hanson Cable Access Television. We were talking about something separate, and Eric had some ideas, and hopefully he's actually on, about sound equipment and the need to balance the sound equipment. And this is way above my pay grade, so I'm just going to see if Eric's on so that he can kind of like take it from there, because that's about as much as I can say about talking points. Eric, are you there?
Yes, sure. Happy to speak on that. And Jeff sort of alluded to that a little bit in what he said as well. So I was going to just ask for clarification and be certain that the audio plans for graduation could be advanced earlier for your meeting, and then get a little bit more clear on the process for that. Like, I'm not sure if that company is going to want to set up their gear and leave that on the field, or if they're going to want to set it up and strike it each time. So we should potentially be prepared for the costs of essentially whatever it would be for graduation, you know, duplicating that cost for a single night's meeting, potentially duplicating that cost for a second night if needed, because that's really it. And so we usually use a firm to do the audio when we meet in Hanson Middle School. And so this is a slightly larger production because we actually have to rent the microphones, we have to rent the speakers. And so we have put together a quote with that firm for those costs. But again, as has been said here, if it's possible to work with all the exact same plans that are already in place for graduation, it makes a lot of sense just to see if we can extend that. But I just do want to make sure that we're clear on any added costs or logistics, because it may not be that it gets set up. If Whitman meets on Monday, I'm not certain it will get set up Monday and left until graduation concludes, or if it will need to get set up separately and broken down in between. So I think we have to get clear on that.
Okay, so Sean, thoughts on that? And I guess who's to do would that be to follow up on the sound equipment and all that?
Yeah, I think maybe Jeff can speak a little better to this than I can. I mean, Mr. Bob Rogers was part of our group today, and so I think he's got some thoughts on how we can do this. But I'll turn it over to Jeff.
So thanks, Sean. So basically, if you folks decide this is going to be a go, we'll start the process in place, and we'll talk to our vendors about the setup. You know, again, I haven't gotten a firm from Whitman on that Monday, so we're still in limbo, just prepping for graduation. But after talking to Sean, I think if you want to do this, I'll cost it out, and then I was just going to send the bill over to Mr. Stanbrook, and hopefully COVID-19 CARES funds from Plymouth County will cover some of these costs because it's outside the realm of our normal day to day. We had that discussion on the field today about the additional cost for sound and the cost for the porta potties and the cost for some of these things that we're hoping that, because this is a COVID related expense, that between Mr. Lanham and Mr. Stanbrook, we can work with the two municipalities to offset those costs.
I like
and
your
they
thought
should be
process
covered.
on that. That's
So,
awesome.
You
Yeah.
know, so I think, and I can talk to Eric about his sound company. Jason Cook is doing our sound for graduation, but I'm sure they're going to want to secure their equipment, and it will be an additional cost to set it up and break it down because it is pretty sensitive and pretty expensive gear that they set up. But I think if you folks are a go with this, we'll start working behind the scenes to make sure that it happens, and we can do that setup to start it, and make sure it's ready for you on that Wednesday.
Okay, that sounds good. Can I just do a round robin? Ken, thoughts, anything we missed? And thank you for thinking of this. It's awesome. It's, and, well, as far as I'm concerned, it's awesome, but I want to go around and see what other people think.
I just want to thank Diamond and also Mr. Keeley and Ms. Sloan, because those are the first three that I called before I contacted you. Everybody just thought it was a great idea. So I think from our last meeting when we had this discussion about town meeting, everyone, the consensus was outside. So when Whitman moved theirs to that Monday, and I knew graduation was the 31st on that Friday, that's where we came up with it. So I just want to thank them.
Well, thank you. We thank everybody. It's a good group effort. It's a perfect exercise in group and collaboration. Mr. Dyer, thoughts, questions, comments?
I just want to say thank you very much for everyone that put a lot of thought and work into this. I do have strong reservations about having it outside. If it's a 95-degree day, we're going to be sitting out in this open sun, and I don't think people are going to feel comfortable, and never mind sitting on metal chairs. We just have to think about our populations that do attend town meeting, and sitting in a metal chair for 5 hours or 4 hours might not be the most comfortable thing for them. I just have concerns about costs and the weather. If we get rained out on one day, the next day is too hot, and then we have to go, and then it's Friday. Let's just say it carries over to the next week. Now we're renting this equipment now for a prolonged time. So
What are you thinking? Inside, you'd like to see it in the gym or something, or where are you going?
Yeah, either the gym or the auditorium, I think would be the best. Have overflow. I know it's expenses and whatever, but I think if we can have it inside, I think we have a little bit more control over the situation.
Okay.
But,
all right.
No, I thought this was a great exercise to talk it out.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Mr. Hickey.
Great idea, Kenny. And it was great to see that everybody worked on it to get it done, to present it to tonight. And with Sean's idea of starting the meeting at 6:30, maybe even 6, if it starts at 6:30 and we have a drop dead time of 9, the most anybody will be sitting in those middle seats would be for 3 hours if they showed up early. It's the new normal. We have to take a chance that the weather will be good. If not, then we come up with another plan. But I still have concerns about being in an enclosed area with the possibility of 500 or 600, 1,000 people. We don't know.
Yeah.
I like the outside idea, Kenny. Excellent.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Hickey. Mr. Bloss, thoughts, comments, questions?
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to go with Sean. Let's say give it a try. It is a new world. I agree with Matt. I was expecting an indoor situation, but try it, see what happens. I'm there.
Yeah, and Laura.
Yeah, and I feel the same way, Sean. I totally hear what Matt is saying, and if it were a little bit earlier in the day, I think I'd be more concerned. And perhaps we could think of a small tent for people that just really, I don't know, like very heat sensitive or something like that with fans or something. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I think where Jim was just going and Wes was just going with it. I think from everything I've read, I guess we're all becoming like virologists and becoming specialists in this, but from everything I've read, the transmission rate is a lot higher indoors. So I just think outdoors is going to make people feel more comfortable. Mr. Simonek.
I was just going to say, we actually mapped out the gymnasium. We can fit 300 people in the gym, 6 feet apart. The gym is not air conditioned. So you're
Yep.
talking, it's hot outside, the gym is not air conditioned. The Performing Arts Center can fit probably between 125 and 135 people in an air conditioned spot. So
Yeah.
the indoors might be just as limited as outdoors. So we did look into that too, and I offered that to Mr. Keeley.
Yep. Okay.
And
That's good to know.
I'm hoping, Laura, that, I know it's July, but by 6 o'clock, it may be a little cooler. There will be that cooling tent set up that we've already contemplated, where somebody can go and, get out of the sun, can get something to drink, have a fan on. I'm hoping, and I plan to put something into the Express before the town meeting, just asking people to be as flexible as possible. This is not something we're going to try and do every single year. This is an unusual circumstance, I hope. And so if we can be flexible, I would have loved to have had one of those town meetings where we didn't really have a whole lot of controversy. But the fact is that we do. And we have to plan for a large crowd. And, quite frankly, I want people to be heard, and I want people to feel safe showing up. So I think this is the best way to go.
Okay. So I'm a little, Jim, was somebody just saying something? I don't know who it was.
Yes, Laura, I'm sorry. I just
Okay,
checked the,
yeah.
on Wednesday, July 9th, the sun will set at 8:05 p.m.
Okay.
So Sean's right that it's going to get cooler and the sun's going to be pretty much down by 8:05.
And maybe we'll all be treated to a beautiful little sunset. So that would be another bonus there.
That would be lovely.
Okay, so all right. I think it's great now. John, I know you've got Beth in the room with you, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts and Beth's thoughts are, whether you feel like this is something you're comfortable with and you can work with.
I don't have any problems with it. I think it's a great idea. I think that the circumstances would really require us to talk what we're going to be talking about later on in the night of, let's get the non-controversial things out of the way and moved quickly. And we are spending the shortest amount of time on the things that aren't controversial. And let's spend the time on the things that are controversial and where everyone still can be heard. But we could spend that 2.5, 3 hours that we have on the things we should be talking about, and not about the things where no one has a problem. The perfunctory things we have to do every time we have a town meeting. So I think it's even more. I like the idea of doing it, and it's even more of a case of, let's get the consent agenda going as much as possible, so then we can spend what limited time we have on the things that we'd like to talk about. And I'm going to move out of the way so Beth can come in.
Hey, Beth.
Hi, guys. The only thing that I have an issue with is the ADA. I just want to make sure that isn't compliant, and they did assure me that they would attack it and make it so everything would be fine. I personally think I like the ramp thing that they said they could do, only because it's with people would be coming in to check in. So that
And do you feel comfortable, that you're the workers are going to feel comfortable out there, and that just like the flow and the logistics are going to be okay for you and everything you need to do?
The flow and logistics will be fine. As far as workers, I am not going to be having my registrars do it. I'm going to be having my election workers. I'm going to be getting different people to do it, and I'm going to have extra people.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So you feel comfortable with this plan?
I do.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I mean, it sounds like it's, a few little reservations here and there, but by and large, I think most people are kind of on board with it. Now, to the, which I think we're talking about later, the piece about how we're going to order town meeting. I know we're going to go with the different way of presenting the articles, but one of the other things that I heard when I was on that MMA call a couple weeks ago about running town meetings was they had very, very strongly suggested, for a lot of the reasons that we're talking about, changing up the way we're presenting the articles and the order we're doing them and all of that, they had very strongly suggested that about 2 weeks before town meeting that you get some type of either a video or a program that is just absolutely information laden with everything that people need to know about the articles that are going to be talked about at town meeting, so that we can get that information out and people can self-educate themselves about things. Because a lot of times those questions will come up, which I'm not saying we don't want any questions, but ideally would like people to try to do most of that kind of like self-tutorial stuff before they get to town meeting and not be answering as many questions on the fly. So, you know, I think if we do the thing that Kate had suggested, combined with trying to get as much information as we can about the articles that we know people really need to be armed with as much information and facts as possible, I think that will really help expedite things. So that's just my unsolicited 2 cents worth on that. So I think, Sean, I'm not sure, and maybe this is a question for Kate, does the Board of Selectmen need to vote to change this? I think this is in your ball court, Sean, to make the decision. Once we vote on what we did, it's now yours to decide to change the date and on the logistics and all, but correct me if you think I'm wrong.
Laura, let me jump in on that, because there, in terms of the location, it is a vote of the Board of Selectmen pursuant to Acts of 2020-92, Chapter 92. Okay. And because the warrant's not yet posted, because you haven't posted the warrant, the Board of Selectmen can do it. Otherwise, Sean's limited to 30-day postponements.
Okay. All right. So Sean, as long as you're not going to feel offended or feel like we're stepping on your toes, I think it's a matter of formality. We'll just take the vote tonight, then we can just move it forward. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Okay. So then I will entertain a motion.
Sorry, it's good he's here because it has to be in consultation with the moderator. So if you wanted to form the motion, it could be something like, I move to postpone the town meeting from date to date, and move the location to the Whitman Hanson High School pursuant to the Acts of 2020 chapters 53 and 92.
Okay, did you get all that, Mr. Mitchell? Because I'm thinking you're going to be the one making that motion.
So moved, and I'll give the date from July 20th until July 29th. And
Okay.
possibly.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay.
Second, Jim.
Roll call vote. Mr. Dyer.
Aye.
Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Hickey.
Aye.
Mr. Bloss.
Aye.
Ms. Kemet, aye. Okay, great. Again, thank you so much to everybody that came up with this fabulous idea and worked together on it. Okay, with that, we will move on to, I'm thinking I'm going to just shake things up just a tad, because in the interest of Mr. Simonic's, you know, time.
Laura, just for a second, Beth had a question about, do you want to change the time? I'm sorry.
Well, you can,
Did we want to change the time to 6:30? Is that what you were saying, Beth?
yeah.
Or 6, or whatever we were just talking about with our time.
All right, what time are you suggesting, Sean?
My preference would be 6, just to give us a little bit more daylight, but I understand the concern about people getting there who may be working in their normal business place.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell, thoughts on that? Do you think we should go for 6:30 or?
You can start at 6 o'clock.
6? Okay, Mr. Dyer, thoughts?
6:30 is better, I think, for people to get there.
Yeah, all right, Mr. Hickey?
Yeah, let's compromise 6:15 and let's just get it started.
I almost thought that, but then I thought I was getting crazy. Mr. Bloss?
Yeah, I don't want to spend another 15 minutes trying to decide whether we're going to start at 6 or 6:30.
Well, we do have to come up with a consensus. Mr. Bloss, thoughts?
I would say 6:30, and Mr. Keeley starts the meeting by saying it's sunset at 8:05, so let's move.
Okay, and so Kate, do we have to officially amend that motion?
Yeah, or you can just make it a second motion. I move to set the time.
All right,
of-
Mr. Mitchell.
I'd like to make a motion to set the time for town meeting to start at 6:30 p.m. on July 29th.
All right, roll call vote. Oh, second, sorry.
Second by Matt.
All right, thanks. Roll call, Matt,
Aye.
Kenny,
Aye.
Jim,
Nay.
Wes,
Aye.
and Ms. Kemet. Aye. Okay, so moving on. Superintendent Simonek, we have got you here. We're just going to juggle the agenda a bit to talk to you about, or to have you talk to us about the interim FY21 WHRSD operating budget. And although those of us that are on the phone right now are probably quite familiar with the situation we're in, if I could just impose upon you a bit to kind of lay it up for those that might not have been following this all along, of where we are at and briefly why we are there.
Sure. So, so since both town meetings fall after July 1st, the Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, dictates that any regional school district that doesn't have a budget by June 1st submit information regarding the FY21 budget and lack of town meeting or reasons why a budget has not been passed. Obviously, we're not having a town meeting, and we are one of 87 districts in the Commonwealth right now, regional school districts that doesn't have a budget. In the interim, the commissioner steps in on July 1st and issues what we call a 1/12 budget. A 1/12 budget will be using FY20 numbers, which is the last approved budget that's approved by both communities. And the commissioner then issues a 1/12 or a monthly check to the regional district until such time that the region or the both towns or three towns or whatever make up the regional school district approves the FY21 budget. That interim budget of 1/12 can go from July, August, September, October, and in November, if we still don't have a budget approved by both communities, we then submit another round of numbers to the commissioner. If we don't have a budget by December 1st, the Department of Education takes full fiscal control of the regional school district. So the misnomer is July 1st isn't full fiscal control. July 1st is he sets a budget to ensure that the students in both communities or whatever makes up the regional school district, that there is a budget for students to return, whether they return in late August or early September. Full fiscal control will be determined by the Department of Education if we don't have a budget approved by the town of Whitman or the town of Hanson by December 1st. That 1/12 budget means that we're going back to what we had for a budget. Basically, it's a level funded budget. So our budget went up this year. We were asking for 55 million plus. The budget number that we're using right now is 52,425, 73,738, and the commissioner will issue 1/12 of that. My concern over a 1/12 budget is if when teachers come back, if they're to come back, we won't be able to pay their salaries if they come back in August or September on a 1/12 budget. As most folks know, in both communities, we issued reduction in force letters to 117 folks. By law, we had to issue reduction in force letters to any non-professional status teacher, which means any teacher that is in our employ less than 3 years on June 1st. There are 65 plus teachers like that. The reason we had to issue 117 was it was all non-PTS, and because of the fact that we could go deeper into the pool based on bumping and contractual bumping rights by our teachers. So the reality is, if we don't have a budget in either community after town meeting, the reality is if we start in August, we will be under a 1/12, and that will mean a reduction in force for our payroll of teachers opening of school. If we end up in this is something I mentioned to the school committee last week, is there's a potential that we could extend until extend the summer vacation, so to speak, until after Labor Day, which would give us more time in the effect that if both towns can't come up with a budget in July, we would have another shot potentially to have a conversation at a town meeting or a super town meeting in August. That's a matter of timing, but the clarity around a 1/12 is the commissioner issues the budget. The budget is based on the statutory method. That's not negotiable with me. It is not my budget anymore. I lose budgetary control of numbers as of July 1st.
Yep.
We still can maintain payroll. We can still negotiate contracts. We can still do some things that are operational, but the commissioner will then issue that check, so to speak, on the 1st of July and on the 1st of August until we come up with a budget.
Okay. Mr. Stanbrook, did you have anything you wanted to ask or?
No, I wanted to thank the superintendent for coming on and explaining that. That was, everyone's got the document that you sent over. You did send some documents late today. Are these the same documents as that we're looking at tonight, or are they different? Or I didn't get a chance to look at them.
So today, in this craziness of COVID-19 and such, the packet I sent over to you about 2 weeks ago included information from DESE about how to calculate the 1/12 budget. It was supposed to use FY21 minimum local contribution and FY21 Chapter 70 money that came out on the cherry sheet. Today we found out that they'd like us to use FY20 Chapter 70 money from the cherry sheet and FY20 numbers from minimum local contribution. So the documents I sent over today included FY21 numbers from minimum local and Chapter 70, FY21 numbers using E&D and circuit breaker that was approved by school committee, and using those FY20 cherry sheet numbers and minimum local contribution. So you can see a difference in those numbers. Not trying to pull a fast one. This is a meeting we had this morning with Jay Sullivan from the Department of Ed and the Mass Association of Regional Schools. The one thing that both towns need to know is, as of right now, I can't use any excess and deficiency numbers in the commissioner's budget, although that's open to discussion now. It's a statutory thing, and it's up on the Hill, I guess, being discussed. But I did include E&D in in a 1/12 in one set of numbers and no E&D in another, just so you're clear on all four scenarios. And this right now is, I think, the commissioner said he will not go below what was set in FY20. However, there's a possibility that he might go above. Just my gut feeling is he's working with 87 school districts. I don't think he's going to take a magnifying glass to all 87 in the first round. However, that budget could be adjusted as more districts approve their budget and they come off the DESE radar, so to speak. So these are the numbers I think that are pretty solid that we can look at. I think the point for folks in Hanson, and it's been bantered around on social media, once the commissioner assumes fiscal budgetary 1/12 control, you use the statutory method. There is no other alternative. There is no agreement. It's the statutory method. And that will be as well as if he establishes fiscal control in December for the district.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Simonek. The folks on the board are very clear on that, but I'm not sure that everybody is clear on that. I'm going to just go around and see if anybody's got any questions. Mr. Dyer, any questions?
Mr. Superintendent, thank you very much for coming tonight. I had a question from a follow-up from our Regional Assessment Committee. I never heard any follow-up on it, whether or not it's needed to be a 2/3 vote for the assessment to be changed. I know that the both gentlemen that attended, they were kind of onshore and they said that they'd get back to us. I never heard anything, so I just wanted to follow up with that.
So I think, and this is the clarifying piece. I think the fact that once a budget is approved by the school committee out of committee, it needs a 2/3 majority of the committee to push that budget forward. So the means of assessment, whether it be, and I know we've talked about the agreement method or the statutory method, and I know the school committee took a vote of 6-4 to start with the statutory method to push it out. It wouldn't matter. You needed a 2/3 majority, and this is what we've heard from the Department of Ed, is that you need a 2/3 majority to finalize the budget out of committee, which would then mean it was a 2/3 majority agreeing on the assessment methodology. So I get it. It's hard to explain. The school committee voted 6-4 to use the statutory method. If the committee didn't move that budget out of committee, the statutory method would not have passed. It needed a 2/3 majority. So the committee, any budget needs a 2/3 majority, and once the budget is passed, that's the agreement on the method of assessment. So Matt, I'm not sure if that clarifies. A budget cannot move out of any committee or out of school committee to the town without a 2/3 majority, and that 2/3 majority would then would carry whatever method of assessment that is. So it is a 2/3 majority for the assessment methodology.
Okay, thank you. And then I had a quick one.
Does that answer your question, Matt? You good on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I had a quick question on, can the schools do, I know the municipalities can do a 1/12 plus budget. Is that something that the schools can do as well, or is it strictly just a 1/12?
It's strictly just a 1/12, and again, it could be determination of the commissioner if he allows them to go forward, but there's been no discussion of a 1/12 plus at the regional school district level.
All right, and then my last question for you, Jeff, would be for the fall situation. I didn't get to tune into last week's school committee meeting, but for the fall situation with different regulations or different talk about only having 10 kids per classroom or anything like that, could you speak upon that? What does the fall kind of look like right at the moment, and would you need additional funds for the changing school year?
So there was a conversation with the Commissioner of Education on Friday, and basically he said, stay tuned to the governor's message, which was supposed to be delivered today, and that was postponed to Thursday. I believe the governor is going to speak to the state of education, and this is, again, information that I haven't seen the governor's agenda, but the governor is going to address what he believes or what he thinks school is going to look like. Right now, based on the information that we were given as a template, they did talk about a 10 students per classroom. That was just a discussion item, according to the commissioner. That wasn't set in stone. The PPE recommendations is a challenge for us. If the current recommendations for PPE is what is true, it's going to average between about $460 per student, and that totals up to about $1.9 million. And we're not sure if it's a local payment or if it's going to be helped out from the state or the federal government. But a lot of the conversation that was posted on social media a couple of weeks ago, the Commissioner of Education said to dismiss that as just discussion points and nothing firm. He pretty much guaranteed us information of the reopening of schools by the end of the month, but he said to stay tuned to the governor's message on Thursday or today, but now I guess it's on Thursday. So I think I'll have more information next week at school committee based upon what the governor says on Thursday.
Great, thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Mitchell.
Okay, this is more of a statement. So basically, if the commissioner takes over and we go to a 1/12 budget, assuming that the override doesn't go through and assuming that both towns don't get together and work it out, it sounds like it's going to cost us more money and we're going to have less services. Everything's going to be based on the statutory method.
That would be correct, Mr. Mitchell.
Okay, thank you.
The assessment would, based on the statutory method, Hanson is going to pay more than they did last year. And if we're in an FY20 budget, when school starts, there will be a reduction. And I say 40 employees, it's really 26 employees, but I have to judge for unemployment costs. We pay 40 cents on the dollar, so to speak, in unemployment, which would tune up to about 40 employees that I would have to reduce to make sure that we were covered in a deficit of $2.6 million.
Right, well, not only the school, if the override doesn't go through, we would have to make some cuts somewhere as well. So when I say we're going to pay more and have less services, not just the regional school system, I'm talking the town of Hanson as well. And I just want to make sure that people know that.
Yes, Mr. Stanbrook, on that point, are you able to say what we would be paying for an assessment in that scenario that Mr. Mitchell is talking about?
Yeah, I think it's in the back of the packet. I want to say it's another $570,000 on top of the 800,000. So I think it would be 1.3 million in the straight statutory. I'm trying to find it here. It would be 1.3 million more than what we have in the budget right now. It would be 11.785 as opposed to 10.4 plus the $800,000 or 11.2. So about another $500,000 on top of the $800,000 if it was just straight statutory.
Is that straight statutory on a 1/12 of 2020?
No, that would be if the FY21 budget was voted and it was just by the statutory method alone.
Okay, but Mr. Mitchell was saying if we go to a 1/12 of 2020 budget, at which, as Mr. Simonek correctly described, would be statutory method, then we would still, I believe, be paying, but I'd like you to do a sanity check on this, 11.4 million for our assessment. Mr. Simonek would still be required to reduce staff, and we would still be required to reduce services because we would not have the money to meet either of those obligations fully.
That is correct.
Okay. Mr. Hickey.
Mr. Simonek, you had mentioned a couple of different times, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything, that to come out of the committee and then come out of the school committee, it needed a 2/3 vote. But you had mentioned that the vote was 6-4. Am I correct?
So originally, when we were discussing this, the school committee can take a vote to determine what method they want me to do the budget. So for February, I needed a methodology to do the budget. In the past, we've always done the 60-40 agreement method. This year, the committee chose to vote, and that was a majority vote for me to do the budget in the statutory method. That doesn't mean that budget using the statutory method could have a majority vote to come out of committee. The committee had to vote 2/3 to vote the budget out, which meant they also voted 2/3 to accept the statutory method. If the committee voted 6-4, we wouldn't have a budget out, and they would have to redecide if they wanted me to use a different method of assessment. So they can charge me with a majority vote to determine a budget based upon one method, but the method that had to be used or for a budget to carry needed a 2/3 vote to move it out of committee. So yes, you are correct. They chose a 6-4 majority for my February budget, which was our formal budget presentation. But to move it out of committee, it needed a 2/3 vote, which was what they voted out. And actually, they voted on an amendment to the agreement to move the budget out of the committee, which was a combination of the statutory method and the agreement method.
And what was that vote?
Off the top of my head, I think it was 10-0 to move the budget out. I think, but I don't want to misspeak. I don't have that off the top of my head.
I think there was one dissenting vote on using the agreement method.
On the amendment, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay, great. Mr. Bloss.
Really, I have no questions. I'm reiterating what Mr. Hickey has said and what Mr. Simonek has said and what Mr. Mitchell has said. What my understanding is, the town is going to be $1.35 million short. That money will be taken from public services. And at the same time, the schools are going to lose 40 employees. And the kids will be impacted there. So just as a former educator, it breaks my heart that our kids are going to be so dramatically impacted, first by COVID, now by this budget. And at the same time, my former kids many of whom we've hired in these last couple of years for police, for fire, who are just starting out in the town of Hanson, beginning their professional careers. I am going to assume that they are going to be the ones who are hit by this cut in public services, and many of them are going to lose their positions, and it'll lose deep because we are $1.35 million short. So that's just a statement. I think Mr. Simonak and Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Hickey have explained the situation very clearly, and it simply breaks my heart that that's where we are.
Okay. Mr. Simonak, anything else that you wanted
Nope.
to?
Just I've just gotten it from the Mr. Hayes that it was a 9-1 vote. Just to clarify, it was 9-1 out of the committee. You were correct. No, I'm just again a lot of banter on social media, and I'm trying to stay out of social media. I can keep whatever hair I have left, but I don't have a choice. Once July 1st comes, Commissioner Riley and or designee will issue a budget for us, and it's based on the statutory method. There is no conversation. Both towns lose somewhat control of the school budget until they can come to an agreement. In years past, it's usually 3 or 4 regional school districts that have this issue. Currently, we have 87. In years past, the designee would come down and meet with both boards of selectmen or FinComs or designees to try to work something out. I don't see that happening with 87 regional school districts. However, if we don't have a budget in August, that might be something that they start that conversation with. If more regions have their town meetings in the month of July, but that's not a guarantee. I did submit all our information, and I believe Mr. Stanbrook had a copy of everything I said to the commissioner. I did write a letter, kind of a plea, saying that we did cut positions last year as well, and we tried to be as fiscally economical as we can. But I think the bottom line is, as of July 1st, the district is using the statutory method, and I know it's something that's been talked about in Hanson, and there is no choice in that. One of the other additions that I just wanted to bring up, and I will present this to the school committee on Monday. Standard & Poor's actually did a review of the regional school district, and one of their we are probably going to move down in a credit rating because of the lack of excess and deficiency that we have in our account. Regional school districts can keep up to 5%. Currently, as of right now, I have 1% of E&D for the regional school district, and we've put forth $350,000 of that. So I have less than 0.5% of E&D for the district, and they recommend us keeping between 3 and 5%. And they've seen over the years that we've gone from $1.3 million now to $609,000, and as of July 1st, if we had an approved budget, $350,000 less than that. So it's just something that I know folks have talked about, the use of E&D. We have used E&D, and that is now hurting our credit rating with for bonds. So that's a concern, but I just wanted the selectmen to know that today.
And Mr. Simonak, I hope you recognize that this position that we find ourselves in is not of Hanson's doing, and we're trying to respond as best we can in the short period of time that we've been given to try to respond to this move to statutory. And I think to the person, we support the schools. We're in a really precarious position. We were in a precarious position to begin with, but now if you layer on the COVID-19 uncertainty of what you guys are going to get for Chapter 70, what we're going to get, it's a very precarious position. And I think we all feel, at least I can speak for myself, I feel very queasy about the prospect of where things are going to land. So we do appreciate you coming and talking to us about it. And, we'll continue to try to keep the lines of communication open and keep working with you and with our peers in Whitman to try to keep things chugging along as best we can in the face of everything we've got going on here.
I appreciate that, members of the board. And the only thing I did want to add is this budget, this 1/12 does not account for any cuts in Chapter 70. And as you know, we receive $24.6 million in Chapter 70 aid, and any percentage cut in Chapter 70 aid will also hurt the district. So we have an assessment issue that we're dealing with now, and a potential revenue issue in the Chapter 70 piece. So these 40 positions are based upon the assessment or a 1/12, and I don't know if and when the governor's budget comes out, if there's any reduction in Chapter 70. We'll be speaking of that, and we've got no information from anywhere in the state of when that governor's budget's going to come in. I'm just crossing my fingers that there's not a hit to Chapter 70, but there has been conversations about a hit to regional transportation reimbursement and also circuit breaker reimbursement instead of Chapter 70 or in addition to Chapter 70. So I'll keep you in tune, and I appreciate the lines of communication, and I'm willing to speak to you folks at any time, and hopefully in person at some point, because I'm frankly getting tired of the Zooms as much as you guys are. So I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you so much, Jeff. Anything else anybody wanted to ask before we? I mean, you can certainly feel free to hang on, Jeff, but it's probably going to be like watching paint dry for you.
I'm cutting out. Thank you, folks. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Kate, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, great. I've got you on the agenda to talk about the request by Impressed LLC to amend the community host agreement. And I know there's been some discussions, so do you mind bringing the board up to date on where we are with discussions with Impressed LLC?
Yeah, sure. As a matter of sheer fact, I had a Zoom call with Impressed today, earlier this afternoon, based on the commentary from the board from last time to suggest that you may be interested in opening the discussions, given that we're looking for revenue. So I gave that indication to them, which was really kind of important for their timing, because they were about to submit a special permit application for the cultivation facility. And I said, before you do that, if the board and you are going to end up reaching a deal on either an amendment to the existing HCA or a brand new HCA, it would probably make sense to do that piece first, because the special permit piece is the very technical piece where they present their engineering, it gets peer reviewed, it's got everything to do with their HVAC system and what they're using their water for and how they're going to recycle that water, all of those technical aspects. So I said, frankly, it would be better to have that presented in a single application before the board. So they were thrilled with that. They indicated to me that they were intending on submitting plans to both Conservation Commission and the Zoning Board, because they're going to make changes to the exterior of the building to try to square it off, and that will impact both of those boards. They'll need a variance and they'll have a notice of an NOI, whatever it is for Concom. I'm blanking on.
Notice of intent. Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much. I had a brain freeze there. So they're submitting those shortly. I indicated to them that I could work on the language for an HCA, and they could come in and present to you formally what their plans are to add the manufacturing component and how that would increase their revenue, which would also increase the revenue to the town, and whether or not there would be additional impacts to the community from the additional use, which I don't suspect to be actually significant. And we could do that all in one fell swoop. I could work in the background to work on HCA language that I think would work, and we could present the HCA and they could present their business plan to you at the same time. You know, in light of the fact that we have an upcoming town meeting and all of these things going on with the regional agreement, I said, geez, I'm not sure if we'll be able to get you before the board immediately. You know, it might be after town meeting, so we might be looking at August, but I said I'd broach that with you all tonight to see what your appetite was for getting them before you and when.
I think we want to do it as soon as possible. I think I may be making this up, but I thought we might have discussed trying to get them in on our next meeting, which I think is the 30th.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, then I can work super quickly to get an option for you for the HCA, and I'll let them know to get prepared for the 30th.
Let me just pop around to the guys and make sure that was, because I thought that's what we had talked. Mr. Dyer, thoughts?
I'm all for it.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, let's get him in ASAP.
Okay. Mr. Hickey?
Absolutely.
Okay. And Mr. Bloss?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, so if we could try to make that happen for the 30th, obviously we're not going to see them physically, but we will invite them to the Zoom fun or the go-to meeting fun. So great. Yeah, that's great. And thank you for having that conversation with them. And so at this, just to level set, at this next meeting, they will talk to us about what their plans are for manufacturing. So we go from grow to manufacturing, and we're still going to be able to have an independent verification from an engineer about their plans, all of that stuff that we had talked about the first time around, right?
Exactly. That's all going to be fully vetted. This is really just, okay, why do we have the change here? More the revenue end. Why do you need to do this? How will this help your business be successful and therefore give more revenue to the town type conversation?
Okay,
and
great.
then the technical stuff comes later and will be fully vetted.
Okay, awesome. All right, great. Thanks, Kate. So yeah, if we can get that popping for the 30th, that will be amazing. Okay, and I think, Mr. Stanbrook, I'm turning it over to you to vote to approve the July 2020 town operating budget.
So thank you. Town accountant Todd Hassett came up with a 1/12 budget that we need to submit to the Department of Revenue for approval, I guess, from the Director of Accounts, so that we can have spending in July. So that we have the budget. Unlike the school department, the school budget, we can do a 1/12 plus budget for the town. It would be normally what was normally paid in July. And for example, I think we may have gone over this before, but for example, the pension assessment for the town is paid all at once in July. So it's not broken up in any debt that's due in July. That is part of the budget. The full debt, it's not a 12th of the debt, because the debt is due that particular day in July. So it is a 1/12 plus budget, and it's all what normally is due in a July month, in a typical July month. So I sent it out to you. The amounts are, let me see here, for the general fund, the 1/12 budget for July 2020 will be $3,420,548. From water special revenue, there'll be $196,374. Recreation enterprise will be $21,962. Solid waste enterprise will be $24,523. So the total for all the 1/12 budget for all departments, all budgets, is $3,663,407. So the regulations say that the selectmen have to adopt it, and then the town clerk has to certify. I'm sorry, the Board of Selectmen have to vote on it, vote for it affirmatively. The town clerk has to certify that vote before June 30th. So that's why we're doing that tonight.
Okay, so you just need a motion from us to adopt the July 2020 town operating budget as presented in our packet.
So it would be to adopt the fiscal year 2021 budget for July in the total of $3,663,407.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second by Matt.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Dyer,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Bloss,
Aye.
and Ms. Kemet, aye. All right, great. Thank you, John. Board of Health update on Phase 2 reopening plans. Arlene, you are on with us. I think, again, in the interest of kind of trying to address the fact that people are on here that probably don't want to linger for every single thing we talk about, that I'm going to suggest we discuss the reopening of Camp Kiwanee and Cranberry Cove. And we've also got on here somewhere opening town fields, courts, and parks. So can we, I know we've got a lot of other things the Board of Health is talking about and working on with Mr. Amato, the health agent, but I'm just wondering, can we kind of focus our lens on those areas, which is the reopening of Camp Kiwanee and Cranberry Cove? And we've got several members of the Recreation Commission that are here with us. My understanding is you guys met last week, I guess. The weeks are just all blending together here. And it was, for lack of a better word, a stalemate. I think it, was you didn't reach a conclusion, negatively or positively. It was, the equal number for and against. But I believe you had a member that was missing because at the time that you had the meeting, he wasn't able to attend. So I just kind of looking to you, Ms. Diaz. Hey, Gil. Looking to you, Ms. Diaz, to kind of bring us up to speed. Then I'll go to Mr. Amato so he can give us his perspective. And so do you mind kind of taking it from there, Arlene? Where are we at in terms of where the Board of Health and the health agent are on Camp Kiwanee and Cranberry Cove?
Okay. One of the issues for Camp Kiwanee, not Camp Kiwanee, the Cove, was Gil had sent out a letter on June 2nd with his recommendations after he met with Bill Boyle, but new orders came out on the 4th, and the new orders on the 4th were for coastal and inland beaches. His recommendations weren't based on that, so everything had changed. So there's been some talk back and forth about the Cove being an enclosed space, which it is not. We talked about it safely could open with distancing, following the orders that are appropriate for it. So I think I know one of the board members on the rec committee was basing his findings on the letter that was done June 2nd by Gil, but that was overridden on the 4th with new orders that came out. So
Okay,
the stuff he stipulated in that letter don't count.
Okay, so I got where you're coming from on that. So I get that there's this technical interpretation of the governor's or reopening orders and all, whether it's closed or not closed, and whether it's an inland beach and all of that other stuff. But my understanding was that a lot of the discussion at the Recreation Commission meeting was really, regardless of that interpretation, which I'm not saying is not important, but really in a way that just drives the number of people that could be at the beach. Not whether it could be open, but how many people could be there if it did open. So isn't it really a fundamental question of, do we feel, and I think we talked about this at our last meeting, perhaps even at our meeting prior to that, we talked about, are we able to safely open down at the Cranberry Cove to a point where, as I think Mr. Bloss told us the last time, we've got a bunch of kids that are manning this, and are we going to have like angry mobs, people that are difficult to deal with? We're going to have these processes that we've got 16 and 17-year-old kids trying to implement. I guess that's kind of, what my question is. Mr. Zucco, thoughts?
Well, we had talked about having 15 spots where you could have up to 10 people in a spot, but they would have to be from the same household. So right off the bat, you're going to have people saying they're from the same household where they're actually not from the same household. And then you have issues where people would be in the water, people are drooling in the water, spitting in the water. It's not an ocean where the water is coming in and out all the time and cleansing itself. It's pretty still. And then you've got lifeguard issues. The lifeguard tells someone they have to distance, you're too close to this person. It's going to go on all day.
Mr. Zucco, I do have to, I did hear just a brief bit of your Recreation Commission meeting, and now again, it's coming up here. Are people wildly spitting and doing these types of things out down at Cranberry Cove, like in a degree that they don't do anywhere else? It's just a bizarre, I don't know. I mean, the
No,
spitting and coughing and.
You go in the water, you're gonna have mucus coming out of your nose, whatever. You know, just the normal part of being in the water.
Okay.
Children might be urinating in the water. These are just things to think about, especially when you have a cove. So let me send it over to Diane. She is the chair of the commission, so let me.
Okay, thank you for your perspective. Diane?
Thank you. I don't think the activity at the Cove will be anything different than it has always been. I don't think that social distancing, if the rules are made clear, which they will be, every person will be handed a copy of the regulations that are going into effect regarding social distancing, spacing on the beach, trash in, trash out, bathrooms, etc. I don't anticipate a problem in the parking lot as well, because there are no social distancing guidelines for the parking lot, but given by the state. And also, I think the people of Hanson are mature enough and can handle it. I'd like to say that I don't think that the pond is a germ fest, kind of the way it's coming off here. The pond is spring fed. The pond is tested by Board of Health on a regular basis. I understand there's a new disease, a new virus in our midst. I understand that. But as far as that new virus being the cause for kids or adults for that matter, urinating or spitting in the water, I don't think that's going to affect usual activity.
Okay, thank you.
And
so Diane, Melissa, I know you're on, and again, I am really trying to be thoughtful about the number of people that we have participate from the Recreation Commission. I thought that Mr. Smith might have some insight. I believe that, Brian, you've been, as part of your day job, which we all have, you have been having some experiences about what some of the reopening requirements are. And I think you had some concerns that you had expressed about whether we had the bandwidth to try to support some of the restrictions.
Yeah, yes, I do, Laura. The one thing that I deal with on a daily basis is exposures. And the one thing you're going to see is restrooms are hot spots for potential exposures. If you're having their buildings, if you're having people in the buildings, you're going to need sign-in logs, because if you have an exposure, you're going to have to contact trace and then go back and mitigate that exposure, which is usually electrostatic spraying, then find out who was in that bathroom at what time, who were they with. You're going to have single people in and out of that bathroom. You can't have multiple people. You have to have proper spacing. The one thing that has come forth with us in the utility world is touchless dispensers. You got to eliminate touch points, which are hand sanitizer, touchless ones, paper towels, flushometers for urinals, toilets, sinks. That minimizes the risk, and it's expensive. And right now, with your sanitizer dispensers and refills, they are not, right now, the supplies are limited because first responders and hospitals are supplied first. And if you do have an exposure, you better have something in place to take care of that, like electrostatic spraying. You need to have a vendor, and they need to respond quickly. I mean, I go through this, I've had multiple exposures, and you got to lock these buildings down, and those restrooms are buildings. And
okay,
you have a potential for a big hit here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. Diane, I can see you waving wildly.
it wasn't wild. We can open the Cove without opening the bathrooms. The only bathroom that needs to be open is the one directly inside the building for the purpose of using it, but for the lifeguards.
Are we Mr. Amato, can you unmute yourself? Gil, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hey, Gil, thanks for joining.
I want to get
so-
some background here, please. I spent a lot of time with Bill at this, and spent a lot of time with Bill going over the different governor's orders and everything as far as relate to the cove. I got one of my phones being here. Sorry about that.
All right. Hopefully they won't keep trying to ring you while we're talking.
The red button. I'm sorry about that.
All right. So Gil, I know you've been working. Gil, you've been working with Billy, and I know you've been interpreting the governor's orders. And honestly, that is important. But I think really what's important here is, do you feel we have to have a bathroom open there? If we've got people, is that required?
Yes.
Okay. And do you feel that it is safe for us to open it up at all? Do you have concerns about opening it up at all?
Yes, I do. As far as social distancing, yes.
Okay. All right. So I think we're in a weird place here where we've got, hold on, Diane, where we've got a board divided, a commission divided. We've got a health agent who feels as though it's not in the best safety and health, public health. We're hearing from Mr. Smith, who's had some real first-hand experience with this. And so I think, yes, Diane, go ahead.
One last thing.
Okay, then I'll get you. Yep.
I would like to point out that, I've been going into stores, I've been going into other places, I've been using hand sanitizer. Not all the surfaces are, you have to touch the surfaces in the bathroom still, in grocery stores and furniture stores, everywhere that I've been going. Not everybody has implemented these touchless devices. Also, I would like to point out that Rockland is opening July 6th. They're opening Hartstuff Pond. The ponds in Pembroke are staffing lifeguards as of this weekend. I know there will be a lifeguard at Little Sandy Pond, and I believe also at Oldham Pond. So these places are, opening to the public. And one of the points that I believe Bill and Mr. Amato, to quote directly, everybody's waiting for the first person to see how they're doing it. Well, the first people are doing it. And I have reached out to the recreation department in Rockland and in Pembroke. And I do have emails back stating what they're putting out and what they're adhering to and such. And I don't think it's impossible that we can do it. I've spoken with a couple of town residents today, who are willing to just pay an out-of-town season pass just to be able to go legally. I drove by the beach today. The beach was packed. And I know that liability, everybody has said that, yes, the beach is an attractive nuisance. I understand that, and that we are not liable if we have our no trespassing signs up. However, and I don't know if Ms. Fedorov can speak to this or not, there's always a loophole. Have we done enough to keep people out of the beach should somebody come and spread COVID at the beach? Where we're unable to post a guard there, we're unable to post a police officer there.
All right, Diane, I see, I feel your passion. It's coming through loud and clear. I feel where you're coming from, and I know you're doing a lot of work on this, so I really am trying to be respectful. But I've got a long agenda, and the guys are going to give me hell if we don't get through it all in a decent amount of time. So I'm just wondering, if I can cut to Kate, who I'd like to get a legal opinion about our liability and what she's seeing others do. I will note Whitman made the very tough decision not to open up their town pool this year. And that's like an institution in Whitman. So Kate, thoughts?
Yeah, so I just wanted to correct a couple of things. So if you look at the Inland Beach guidance they're not specific to the parking lots. I mean, there are some mentions in there, but what it says in there is for loading and unloading, you have to ensure that there's social distancing, no tailgating, no loitering. So I think you have to look at it cohesively to say that really you should be monitoring the parking lot to ensure those things aren't happening. So that is a monitoring piece from my perspective. And in terms of the bathroom, I want to echo what Gil it is, right?
Yes.
Said that I really think you do need a bathroom in that area. And furthermore, I'm not sure who operationally would normally clean the bathrooms, but there are special regulations for bathrooms and it's really specific. And like Wes, I was a lifeguard, and if you're going to trust a teenage lifeguard to do it, they probably won't be consistently applying the standards for cleaning bathrooms. I don't know if that's part of their duties. So that's another thing to consider for sure. Relative to the liability that Diane said, sure, absolutely. There are always loopholes with everything. You can put up signage for anything to prevent things from happening and ensure that you're protected. It's not always going to work. Hopefully it will. Whether or not there could be a civil lawsuit because you opened a facility and people contracted COVID, it's untested, right? This is a nationwide problem, and some people are saying do it at your own risk. You're responsible for yourself to make those decisions, and other people are saying, well, listen, we're the managers of our town, and we have a responsibility to ensure that the system and the areas that we allow people to go to that are under our governance are sufficiently secure to protect them. So that's a question that I can't answer at this point.
All right, thank you, Kate. Gil, and then I'm just going to go, I mean, I think we just need to take a vote, right? Once we get the information, because I think that's why you guys came. You couldn't make a decision because you were split. It was a split vote. And so I think you're just asking, go ahead, Mr. Romano, thoughts?
Okay, I just got one other thing to say. You know, we've got a iconic thing in the town of Hanson. They informed the Board of Health today, the Rainbow Camp will not be operating this summer. They're closing their program down for the summer. So
That's an interesting, that's a good, yeah. And they've been, how long have they been there, Gil? Like 50 years?
50 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the first time they've ever done it. So they are suspending operations for this season.
Okay, I think that's, thank you for mentioning that. So we're seeing other, you know, obviously, Diane, you're saying some opening. I guess obviously the towns around us are split on that too. So, you know, here we are. Mr. Dyer, thoughts?
My personal thought is I think we can open it. I talked to Diane, I talked to Juvie, I heard their plans. They have a plan in place. Last time that they were here, they didn't have a plan. But after speaking with Diane and Juvie and hearing how they've done their research around in the neighboring towns and how they're opening their local watering holes and cooling areas, I think that we can do it at a reduced rate of occupancy. I think we can do it. And as our mantra has been on this board for the last 4 months is, let's follow the governor. And the governor has opened up DCR parks, ponds, and swimming areas. And I think if the governor says, let's do it, I think we should follow the same, because Camp Kiwanee is a cooling center. It's a public health thing where heat waves kill more people than any other natural disaster. So I think we need to make sure we open this up so we have a relief area.
I get it. I mean, and Kenny had said when we first talked about this, the kids are crawling the walls, that, you know, they've been home with their parents for 3 months. Nobody's going on a vacation. You know, people are about to explode. But, you know, anyway, Mr. Mitchell, thoughts?
I'm fine with opening it, you know, as long as they practice social distance and all the stuff everybody talked about. The only thing that I worry about, which I don't think we can answer tonight, is just the financial impact. Chairman Sullivan from the Finance Committee was certainly concerned, you know, about the financial impact, but, you know, I don't want that. I don't want that to be a deal breaker for me, but it is a slight concern of mine, but I'd be fine with supporting them to open tonight.
All right, Mr. Hickey?
Laura, I would be against Camp Kiwanee and Cranberry Cove opening, and I'm actually looking at the financials now. In no scenario does the Cove make money. So it's an easy out for me to say if it's not going to make money, it doesn't open. When my real concern is that that COVID-19 could spread from Cranberry Cove being open. But financially, there isn't a single scenario where it makes money.
Okay. All right. Mr. Bloss?
No, I'm with Mr. Hickey. I do not see a fiscal possibility with this. I'm feeling very badly. A member of the Recreation Commission told a friend of mine that the Board of Selectmen is out to get the Recreation Commission. That is so not true. We're trying to look out for the best interests of the town, and whether we split our vote like the Recreation Commission just has, the Recreation Commission is clearly not on board in any degree. As of last meeting, we had no plan for lifeguards, hadn't even started to be hired. We didn't know how you were going to sign up to pay. I mean, is this going to be done by cash, passing hands at the gate to a teenager like it used to? Is this going to be done by calling Dory at the camp and booking a time? Actually,
I
it was
don't know
Mr.
if we even, I don't even know if we have the answers to all of those questions, and maybe even more, Mr. Bloss.
Mr. Zuko and I just had mentioned, as someone who lifeguarded for years, the parking lot is as big a problem as the beach. And you're going to need to hire a person on the parking lot. If you're going to have 150 people on the beach, 15 groups of 10, then you're going to need, I'm not sure what the ratio is anymore. It used to be a Red Cross ratio, but you're going to need the lifeguards. Then we're going to need someone who is basically washing down the bathroom after every use. It just goes on and on. It's like, I see no way that this is financially possible. If it was, we'd be there. But we're about to hit a catastrophe in this town of $1.35 million in the hole. Recreation is going to take that hit. There's no question. They're not going to be getting extra money from the town, if any money from the town this year. It breaks my heart, but I'd rather we kept the beach closed. Everyone will go onto the beach at their own risk, at their own peril. They'll all sneak around the fence, as we always did. And people will cool, but I can't see that the town can be fiscally responsible for this, and I can't see the town taking the liability for saying, we have staff on guard in bathrooms and parking lots to make sure that no one gets COVID, and then we do. So I vote no.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm basically like, look, everybody needs to do what they feel comfortable with personally, so if people felt comfortable going to the beach, then they should go to the beach. We're at a point where people know if they're immune compromised, or if they're people that they love, they're immune compromised, and they shouldn't be putting themselves in these types of situations. I don't want to dictate that type of stuff for people, but the position we're in is we're stewards of that property as the Board of Selectmen. It's a town property. I want to make sure that we're not making a decision that isn't in the best interest of people's health. And I've heard enough compelling reasons. I mean, unless you guys are able to tell me that you've got, from soup to nuts, you've got this all worked out, and you're able to get like lifeguards in there, and that you'll be able to implement all of these things. But even if you say that, to Wes's earlier point, I don't know where the money's going to come from. We're on a 1/12 budget right now. You just heard us pass our 1/12 budget. So I just don't know where that money's going to come from. So Miss Cohen, I thought you were going like this to me.
Okay. No, I understand the fiscal piece of it, and I know it couldn't come at a worse time. And I'm sorry that you're all in this position, and I applaud your diligence in trying to make these decisions. So, whatever the board votes, obviously we will submit to that. And I've asked Mr. Boyle to put together plans for various scenarios, opening during phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, whatever it should take. So if it would make anybody feel better to hear those, I'm sure he has plans as he was charged with doing. Otherwise, you don't need to hear it, and you can go straight to a vote or whatever you need to do. But I thank you for listening.
Okay, well, we thank you because we know you guys have spent a lot of time talking about this, and trying to, trying to do what's best for the town and trying to, get people to be able to enjoy that property. Does anybody feel as though getting a more comprehensive plan from these guys would change your mind on this? I guess that's my long-winded way of saying, should we defer the vote or just cut to the vote and just cut to the chase? I'm getting a strong vibe from Wes. Mr. Hickey.
I would say just go to the vote, because unless Billy's plan it's got them making money, then that's what I can base it on, strictly financial.
Okay.
I don't have to worry about my own personal view of COVID-19 possibly spreading.
Yep.
If we're going to be in the 1/12th and they're not making money, then I don't need to see it.
Okay, all right, so I will entertain a motion.
I'm assuming there is no motion. We're not taking any
Yep.
action
Well,
on opening
I'm
votes.
saying, I'm entertaining a motion that we not, based
Oh.
on what I'm hearing, that
All
we
right, I
don't,
will,
yeah,
we not open the cove or the camp at this time.
okay. Do I have a second?
And I'll second that.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Dyer,
Nay.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Bloss,
Aye.
and Ms. Kemet, aye. Okay, I really do thank you guys. I know how much work you've put in and I feel badly. It's definitely wasn't our intention to second guess what you were doing, but the tie vote kind of put it in our ballpark. So, Mr. Amato, stay with us because we're talking about some other things that involve you, but thank you for your input on that. If you guys want to hop off, feel free to do so. And thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Everybody, have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, so we similarly, and since we've got Mr. Amato and Arlene on, we have got a request to open up the town fields and basketball, newly done basketball court and parks in town. And I guess, Mr. Amato, did you have thoughts on that?
I believe everybody's been supplied with all the information from the governor on parks and fields and everything. And
Yep.
I've supplied information, everybody, all depends on them and what they want to do, social distancing, not reuse of materials. And I think I've talked to a few people and they put a plan together, and I have no problem with it as long as they, adhere to the governor's guidances. And, my job is to make sure I enforce the governor's guidances. I'm out there every day doing it. So, you have to adhere to these things. You got to stop the spread. And social distancing is the part of stopping the spread. So we have to practice it and practice it diligently.
Okay, I mean, obviously, Mr. Amato, I'm not expecting you to hang out at the basketball courts 24 hours a day or the baseball field, or, I mean, it's just not a sustainable model. So, yes, I agree. It's great that you're going to be monitoring this, but I think we really need to do something around messaging at each one of these facilities about what's expected of people. Mr. Stanbrook, did you have some thoughts on this in terms of signage? Or like how we might be able to handle this if we decided to open up?
I believe he's referring to Kenny.
Oh, Mr. Mitchell, did you have some ideas about signage or what have you?
Yeah, I do think that we should, and I can talk to Parks and Fields. I do think that we should put up signs, like on the basketball court, just letting people know that we should practice social distancing and stuff. Put signs wherever we can on the skate park. So we're just gonna have to just figure out who can print them up and who's gonna pay for it. Like I said, I can talk to Parks and Fields, but I think that's something that we should do. But certainly we should open up the fields. We have the tracks at Whitman Hanson.
Yep.
We have the tennis courts. We have the skate park in town, the basketball courts. So I do believe we should open everything up, and everybody has to adhere to the governor's orders.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think I mentioned to you, Kenny, when I talked to you last week, that it was awesome. I drove by the softball field, and it was great to see all the kids out there playing. And, you know, I thought, well, geez, it's something, some little bright spot in all this bleakness, you know, to be able to see little people out there playing with their buddies. So, but, you know, it looked like they were definitely, you know, small groups adhering to everything, you know. I didn't closely study it or I would have gotten in a car accident, but just from what I could observe. Kate, did you have any thoughts about this? How are you seeing other towns handle this? You know, I think we may even be a slightly late adopter in opening up some of these fields.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're on par with the rest of the towns. They may be a week ahead or a week behind. These youth sports are tricky, and I have to confess I'm not so familiar with basketball. None of my kids play basketball, so I'm just not sure specifically how that would work. Although the guidance does say that you can do no contact drills. I don't know what that is in basketball, but many other towns are opening definitely their soccer fields and the tennis courts, and all of that stuff. I just don't know personally about basketball, and you gentlemen probably know better than I do, but it's contemplated for sure in the order.
Yeah, I mean, basketball, I think it's going to be pickup games mostly, like just casual pickup games. And I don't know how we'd prevent people from obviously using the same ball and contact. I mean, look, I used to play basketball, but I can tell you it's it's a contact sport. Not so much for women, but for guys it is. Mr. Amato, I can see you waving your hand. What's up with that?
Yeah, what I was basically when I was talking about the different leagues and whatnot. I wasn't talking about the individual fields like the skate park or anything like that. So that would be a totally different thing. But what I was speaking towards was towards the fields, you know, the little league and that type of stuff. Not exactly.
So do you have concerns about the basketball court or like the skate park? Because I know Mr. Cahill, our highway director, has gotten, just because of the proximity to the highway barn, has gotten some questions from people about when we're going to open that up.
Yeah, there's different guidances on it. I really haven't addressed it because it hasn't really come up as far as opening the parks and stuff now, but there is different guidances on it. And maybe you would definitely have to have signage and regulations. Probably would, maybe discuss it with Mr. Stanbrook and Mr. Cahill. Maybe come together with something. You're meeting next week, I believe, also.
We meet the 30th. So I think is that next week? Yes, it is. These days are just all blending together. So yeah, we're meeting next week. So what I'm hearing you say is maybe we could meet, I mean, I think we could vote to open them up at a future date, and that would allow you to come up with a plan for the signage. Would that work?
Yeah, I
okay?
think, get together, I think, Mr. Stanbrook, Mr. Mitchell, myself, and Mr. Cahill come up with something. I mean, I've never really thought about the skate park and those items myself, so.
Yeah, I think a lot of the guys that are home, if you're a skater, that's your thing. And, some of them are skating through the streets, and I'd much rather have them in the skate park. I think it's safer, and, it's a good way to burn off some energy. Mr. Mitchell.
I don't think we should hold this vote off anymore. I do
I
think we
agree.
should diligently get the signage. I took a picture of a sign at a basketball court in another town. So I have that, which I can send that picture that I think would kind of sum it up. But I don't think we should hold this vote. Let's get the stuff open.
I agree.
Signage up as soon as possible.
Yeah, Mr. Dyer.
I just want to also clarify, is this also including the playgrounds?
It is including the playgrounds. Yep. Unless somebody has an objection and then we make a vote that's different than that. But, I know a lot of people have been asking about all of those things because, again, the kids are bouncing off the walls and, if you're on a staycation, the walls can start closing in on you. I think, Mr. Mitchell, what I'm hearing, Mr. Amato say is that he may need a little lead time to get those signs up and running and, and all that and get those in place. So I'll entertain a motion. And I don't know what you want to make that look like, because do you think we want to open it up without that signage or where are we at there?
My opinion, just, give it a date and just complete the signage. I mean, I think that's part of the thing to do. I know there's guidance someplace for the playgrounds. I don't have it with me right now, but,
Okay.
give a date and come up with a signage for that date.
Okay. All right. So I will entertain a motion, Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, I'd entertain a motion to open up all parks, fields, tennis courts, basketball courts, playgrounds, skate park.
Okay. I think we covered everything. Okay. Do I have a second?
Contingent, I'm sorry, Laura, contingent on having the signage up?
Yes. Contingent on getting signs up. Yep.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second by Matt.
Oh, second. Oh,
Okay. All right. Roll call vote. Mr. Dyer,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell.
Question on the high school. So are we saying we're not going to allow anyone to get on a basketball court or play tennis until the signage is up? Are we blanketing?
Honestly, I was thinking more of the properties like that we're responsible for when we said that, but that was just me. I don't know what Jim thought or what you guys were thinking. But in my mind, I was just thinking of the skate park and the basketball and the playgrounds.
The rest of the stuff. I don't want to put that
Yeah.
about the sign on everything, and then it takes a week to get the sign, and then I'm getting the phone calls. So, I'm.
What do you
really
guys think, Jim? What did you think about
well,
that?
they're using the basketball court and the tennis courts already. In the skate park, they're hopping the fence.
Yeah.
I mean, Wes even said it. If people want to go swimming, they're going swimming. They're going down the cove. I just want to make sure, our due diligence is that we have the signs.
So can we just get on that, Gil and Kenny? Can you guys just make that a priority so we can pop those signs up as soon as possible?
Like I said, the only issue is, and we need to see who's going to pay for them. I mean, I can try to present it to Parks and Fields, but I don't believe we have a meeting set up. I mean, we can set one up, probably next week. I don't want to hold this process up because we're waiting for signs. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay, I get that, Kenny, but I also don't want to just forge ahead and never get any signs. So there's Mr. Dyer.
I think we should I think we should amend our motion to drop the signage, because it's not like anyone's walking out into the world right now going, oh, I can drop social distancing. I think everyone realizes social distancing is a real thing. And this way we're not tied up on signs. We'll just do our best to get the signage up as quick as we can. And then
All
that
right,
way.
so you're not suggesting we don't need the signs, you're just saying don't make the vote contingent on it.
Correct.
Okay, all right, I dig it. Okay, are you okay with that, Jim?
Sure.
Okay, all right, so we've got a motion revised. No, say what?
I'll take my motion back.
Okay, so
we're going to have to redo it.
Right, so Kenny, the motion that can you just one more time with feeling what your motion is?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to open up all parks and fields, basketball courts, tennis courts, skateboard park, and also children's playground in the town of Hanson, effective immediately.
Okay.
Second by Matt.
Great. Roll call vote. Mr. Dyer.
Aye.
And Mr. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Hickey.
Nay.
And Mr. Bloss.
Aye.
You're saying it. You've got an X, but
I'm starting tic-tac-toe.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. And Miss Kemet, aye. Okay. So that is there anything else, Arlene and Gil, that you needed to bring us up to speed on in terms of reopening? Mr. Amato, I have seen quite a few of the restaurants have got outdoor dining. I thank you for working with all of them after we had our meeting last 2 weeks ago, and then we had the reopening call with the Hanson Business Network. I know you and Mr. Curran were working with everybody, and we appreciate that. Have you met with all of them, and are you guys satisfied that they're all meeting the requirements for the outdoor dining?
Yeah, pretty much. I've gone to every business that's in town, basically. Not only places that are reopening, places that are going to open. Heidi's Ice Cream Shop, working very closely with them. Hopefully have them open by this weekend, which I'm not sure that's going to happen, but by this weekend. All the nail salons that are now open, the barber shop. So basically, I've been to every business in town over the last 3 or 4 months and making sure not only compliance, but, seeing if they need guidance, which some of them really do need guidance because they don't really know where to go to get the guidance or the governor's order. So I pretty much make copies of the orders and bring it to them, and they'll maintain a communication with everybody in town. So the people of Hanson have been really good. The citizens, complying with everything. The business have been really good. They ask questions, they'll call the office and ask questions, and we help them out. So I think
Okay.
everything's really good in town. So we're doing
All
very
right,
good.
great. Arlene, any other Board of Health updates about reopening or anything that we should know about?
Yes, look, the vote that you just took, I want you to know the standards that came out on June 4th states that property-specific guidelines should be posted at entrance points to areas and on relevant social media websites. So,
okay, so we need the
really
signage.
need to be put up right away.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we need the signage. Okay. I think I don't think Mr. Dyer was dismissing the need. I think he just didn't want us to get all caught up in this crazy, crazy thing of waiting for the signs and waiting for Godot. Okay, so anything else, Arlene?
Nope.
Okay, awesome. All right.
And Laura, can I just ask, maybe the signage costs in the end, John Stanbrook could submit them to the CARES Act from Plymouth County.
I would think so, Wes, definitely. It's a good point.
Yes. He's
yeah.
saying yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the 2020 annual and special town meeting warrants. Mr. Stanbrook.
Hi, thank you. So the special town meeting and the annual town meeting, the latest drafts were in your packet. They are also on the town website under the news banner. It's the first thing on the news one. So if anyone is listening at home or wants to see what our drafts are that we're going to go over tonight, they can look on and see it there if they go to the town website. So there's a special town meeting one. I don't know how you want to start. Maybe with the special town meeting, I guess, the first one.
Yeah.
I am reaching over here to grab it. Okay, thank you. All right, so right now we have 11 articles on the special town meeting. And we could go through them, very quickly if you like. And I think Kate's still with us, right? Is Kate?
Yep.
Kate is, yes. Okay, so if Kate has any questions. Okay, so the first Article 1 is an unpaid bills, to pay any unpaid bills from prior fiscal years. Again, this is one where anything paid in a prior fiscal year has to come before town meeting, and it requires a 9/10 vote. This is a one that you have almost every meeting, because sometimes bills comes out of the blue. Article 2 is a supplemental appropriation for the budget for last year for the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. Again, that's going to be $35,000. That's the only budget supplemental appropriation on the warrant. And that's just they've had extra costs of the transfer station, so that would be $35,000 there. It's not in the article, but I think we talked earlier about the consent agenda. Again, and maybe Kay can chime in on this, but at least I was thinking that perhaps Article 1 could be a vote by itself, but then Article 2 through 11 might be part of a consent agenda. And I know, Kate, you had looked into that. I don't know if you want to just talk about that real quickly, but.
Sure, and I sent a sample consent agenda to both Sean and John today, but probably they didn't even get a chance to look at it because it was this afternoon. Yeah. So, and that's exactly it. I put 2 and everything from 2 forward on the special on the consent, because I didn't see anything in there that looked at all controversial. The only thing, and actually John and I talked it through, and he convinced me to not put 1 on because 1 triggers a 9/10 vote. And if you lumped it all together, then the entire package would be 9/10. And if there's any little issue there, I'd rather avoid it. So we most likely that motion on Article 1 will go through pretty quickly regardless, but let's not risk the whole consent agenda based on that quantum.
Yeah, I agree. I'll take it separately and a 9/10 vote. It'll be cleaner for everybody concerned. That's fine. With the other articles, what I'd like to do is to treat it like the budget line items and just go through, ask people if they'd like to hold. If they do, then we'll return to it. But otherwise, we'll take it as one vote. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and giving the people the option to pull it right out, you know, really protects the process. I think that's really smart, and they're familiar with it based on the, that's how we do the budget. So I think it's actually going to be a really good, it's going to expedite things a lot. The thing that we, John and I will have to work on is ensuring that everything we need in the warrant is in the warrant. So we need the source of the funds, and the exact amount of money and where it's going. And so we'll fill in all those pieces to ensure that we can move them.
Now, Kate, is there any way to bundle articles in the annual town meeting as well?
Yeah, I provided you, when we get to that too, I provided you and John again today with a sample. And I took out and this is going to take some collaboration on our part because you guys have a much better sense of what is of interest to the town meeting. So I took a stab at it. I took what I thought, you know, like for example, your Chapter 90 money. No one cares about that, you know. I mean, they do, but they don't want to discuss it. So I gave a shot, and I got, I want to say, a good 10 articles on the annual into a consent.
That's great. Yeah, I'll take a look at them, and you know, if there's anything John thinks might be controversial, you know, obviously I'll take that into consideration. But you know, the more we can do efficiently, the better.
Yeah, even the capital, I thought about, and I wanted to talk to you about that, but the capital expenditures on the annual, I was thinking they're pretty low cost items for capital expenditures, but in light of the financial position of the town and the current financial position of the entire country, I wasn't 100% sure. So we can bat that around. But regardless, even if we put it on there, prepared to put it on there, if someone yelled to hold, we could pull it out and then discuss the thing. So it might make sense to put it on there in the hopes that people really don't care. But if they do, we can pull it right out.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay.
So did you just want to go through each of the, I don't know how you want to.
I was just going to go through them all, and if you,
Yep.
maybe you can, I'll just keep on going, and if someone has a question, I'll stop. It'll be like a mini town meeting almost. Article 3 on the special town meeting is $55,000 for the town's master plan. That's from the planning board, and Deb Petty is going to be working on updating the town's master plan. It's at least 12 years old. Article 4 is $6,262 to reimburse Whitman Hanson Regional School District for repairs made to the elevator. They had to do some elevator repairs, and this is reimbursing them. Article 5 is $25,000 to remove and replace sidewalks at the Indian Head Elementary School, and that's because of the freeze-thaw effect on the sidewalks. They've deteriorated, and now they're a trip hazard. Article 6 is is $3,750 for the Highway Department for a walk-behind blower. They need this piece of equipment. Again, it's a very small amount, but it is its own article. Article 7 is $11,250 to buy a highway berm curber. And that's another piece of equipment that the Highway Department needs. Again, just real quickly, there's a lot of berms in town that are along the road that need to be done by hand. And now they have machines that can do that, and it will move things along and will help with stormwater management and flooding.
And how much is that, John?
That was $11,250.
And we don't have one of those right now?
No, we do not. We do everything by hand.
Okay.
Article 8 is $10,000 for improvements to private gravel roads. I guess this is a perennial article here in Hanson. We do grade all private gravel roads twice a year, and this is one that's on all the time in order to keep those roads passable for motorists, but also for emergency equipment personnel. Article 9 is $65,000 for the stormwater management. Phase 2 of stormwater management. Again, the town's required to keep an MS4 municipal separate storm sewer system permit going, and that's by the Environmental Protection Agency. This is to fund phase 2 of that. I believe there are 4 phases. So that would be to keep that going. We're required to do that by the EPA. Article 10 is $9,000 to repair the parking lot at 228 High Street. Again, the parking lot's in really bad shape there. The highway director's done a little bit of repair there, but it's in really rough shape and it needs a little bit more. Article 11 is to amend the wage and personnel bylaw, and most of the changes are in that, and it goes on for a couple of pages. And that is to just update things that are in the bylaw that were $12 to $12.75. And that's because the minimum wage went up from $12 to $12.75. So that's everything that's on the special town meeting as of right now. Again, depending on the funding situation with the town, some of these things may have to come off. If in a situation, just a hypothetical situation, the state next week says they're going to cut Chapter 70 by 20%. We have to cut $300,000. Obviously, these things are probably not going to be able to be funded, but they're on there right now. Again, let's hope that my hypothetical situation doesn't happen. So I'm not sure if you want to, do you want to vote to place them? And we could always go back, and if things were to change, we could always go back and change it. But if there were any questions, and if not, then maybe you could have a vote to go with the special town meeting as of now.
So just to clarify, if the override doesn't pass and then we get to town meeting and we know that we need to cut things and we need to look at the special town meeting warrant to do that, we're able to do that night.
You can also hold off on your recommendations. You can vote to place them on the warrant, and that sort of, gets the process going, and then always refine it. And then you can worry about your recommendations later on when you have a better picture of the fiscal landscape.
And what's our drop dead date that we have to make our recommendations by?
So we just moved town meeting to the 29th, I'm sorry. So there is one more meeting that comes into play now because it's 14 days on this one. So you still have 6/3. Right now you have 6/30 scheduled. That's next week. 7/7 and 7/14, I believe. So you'd have 6/30 and 7/6, 7/7. I'm sorry. You have 2 more times to vote before it got posted.
Maybe I'm oversimplifying this, but I would prefer to wait to make our recommendations until we know what the outcome of the override is. To me, it seems foolish for us to be, perseverating about this, deciding what we want to place, what we don't want to place, and voting what we support and what we don't support. Because if the override doesn't pass, then I think all of us are going to have to change our opinions. Something I might support if I thought the override was going to pass, I might not if I've got to get into some dire choices that we've got to make. It could just be me. Maybe I'm oversimplifying. Mr. Dyer, what do you think?
Nope, I think you're spot on, Laura. Let's not waste any time tonight if we have to go back and revisit these sometime in the future. It's just a few more days until the election results are.
Yep. Mr. Mitchell?
We should put it on next week's agenda.
I agree. Yep. Mr. Hickey, thoughts? Are you okay with that?
Same here.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, Mr. Bloss?
Yep, if we all read through the special and the annual and we have a sense of which articles we support, question, whatever, it's like, just have it ready. Tonight. since I've got the entire thing in front of me, I'm scrolling down with John. I'm just going, why is John reading what I'm reading? I mean, I've read all these at least twice now. So it's like, do I really want to hear everything again until we know? So yes, Laura, I'm with you.
Okay, then I think we just going to skip over that part of our agenda. And we will vote to place articles and make recommendations at our next meeting. And so Greer, can you just mark that as an agenda item for the next meeting?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And that brings us to distribute town administrator 6-month performance review forms. Mr. Stanbrook.
So in my contract, I have a provision that says that I have a receive a performance review after 6 months. And in your packet was the last performance review that I think was used in calendar year 2018. I'm not here. It won't be here 6 months until July 6th. So it's not, not pending right now, but I wanted to get the form out to you to, if you still wanted to use this form, if there is another form that we couldn't find, if you wanted to tweak the form, at least you have a couple of weeks of thinking about that before you evaluate my performance, sometime, I don't know, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now.
Mr. Dyer, did you have something on that? Okay, I thought you were making some hand gesture. Okay, so are you guys okay with just using that form? I mean, I think maybe we'll know better once we dig into it, John. Like if we start to go to using it, and it's like, this is not even something that is going to help us have an engaging, decent conversation, then maybe we can come back and revisit it. But I guess it's a good place to start. So what kind, Mr. Bloss, what kind of time frame do we want to talk about here? How do we want to hold ourselves accountable in terms of timelines?
Oh, are you asking me?
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm not sure. I mean, actually, I think we've got to be ready for 6 months, but I'm just saying again, I think this is a really crazy evaluation. I don't know John's performance even vaguely in this. As I read through it, it's like, I'm social distancing. Except for John's report, I mean, he can say anything he wants, the point is, to me, I've never seen a thing that is so scary for me to actually do an evaluation of a person as this. If a teacher ever had an evaluation like this, we would fight it tooth and nail. 3 things, I think, each year. We teachers, these last several years, was like, okay, what are the 3 things you're going to accomplish now? And let's judge you on those 3 things. I can't judge them all this.
All right, well, then that to me sounds like you don't think that this is the type of form we should be using, which means you just signed up for the committee to create the form that we should be using. That's what that just sounded like to me, Mr. Bloss.
Second.
I'm just
much simpler.
You know what? I'm joking, but I'm not joking because I think didn't we end up tweaking, or we ended up having you work with Mr.
Mike
McHugh.
McHugh, I made an evaluation for Mike McHugh.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, did you come up with something a little simpler for that we might be able to use instead of what John just gave us?
Yeah, I think Mike's had maybe 6 items on it, but they were just 6 items.
Yeah, okay. I mean, so if you want to exhume that and see if you can, kind of block.
The answer is yes, and I will find it, send it to John. It won't relate to John specifically, but he can look at it and say, all right, well, what do I think are maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 things, specific goals that I can say, I've accomplished this. Because we have to just say, I accomplished this.
It needs to be meaningful. We don't want to just kill an ant with a cannon here. It's not necessary. Yeah. Okay. All right, great. Well, we're just cooking along here tonight. All right, and accept May donations. I will entertain a motion. You've all got that in your packet.
So moved by Matt.
Second, Kenny.
Okay. Roll call vote. Mr. Dyer?
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Bloss?
Aye.
Ms. Kemet? Aye. And great, we are on appointments and resignations. We've got our list of annual appointments, and we don't need to exhaustively go through each one. Can't we just make a motion to,
Actually, I'm going to, I went
All
through
right,
this.
okay, okay, let me bring it up, okay.
Yeah, bring it up. I think everyone should bring it up. While you're bringing it up, so I will tell you a story. I went through this. I landed right off the bat on cable TV committee, George Baggio, who is a dear friend of mine. So I went down to George Baggio this morning to visit. George is 91. He's almost blind. He's going deaf. I said, George, I'm asking you as a poster child, are you willing to be reappointed to this commission? He says, oh, that commission hasn't met in 10 years. I said, well, are you willing to be reappointed to it? He said, no, I've never been reappointed. I said, you were reappointed in 2017. He said, no, I wasn't. I said, yes, you were. I've got it right here, and showed him as best as I could with his eyesight. He said, well, no one asked me. And I said, yes. And I think that's the point. So then I went down and said, like, what is the education committee? Has anyone asked? Peg Westfield called her, just talked to her, said, Peg, is there an education committee? Do you want to be reappointed to it? Gary Bannock's on the education fund committee. It's like, has anyone even approached Gary and said, Gary, you interested? Here's Wes Bloss. Wes Bloss is on the Plymouth Hospital Reuse Committee. Now, that hasn't met in a good 20 years. That's not your committee. That's not the Plymouth County Hospital Final Reuse Committee. That died 20 years ago, but I'm being reappointed to it. I'm being reappointed to the School Repair Committee, which we disbanded last year. And then if I flip over to the last page, I've got the entire 20th Anniversary Committee, two of which I know we're about to say they're resigning. But it's like, so their term ends this December 30th, except we've taken the entire year and moved the 200th to the 201st. Right. So it's not gonna, so why aren't we saying, let's do that whole thing for 2021? I hate to do this because now it seems we're putting everything on the next week, but I really think that Greer and John, I mean, if they want to split it up and say, Wes, would you call a couple people? Would Matt call a couple people? Laura call a couple people? It's like, should not be how we're operating. We're just
I agree with you, but for instance, there are people that, like, we know that, like, community preservation.
Absolutely. Bob Cohen probably does not have to be asked. And the special police officers, I'm sure Mike has handled them. Yeah. So I know there are people, especially people right in town hall, that in 2 seconds, you know they're set. But there are plenty of people on this list, I guarantee, who will probably say, sure, yeah, I guess you can reappoint me. But there are committees here that don't exist. There are people here who've never been asked. So in probably 20 years, no one's ever asked me to be reappointed to this committee. It's like, you know what? I think it's probably about time we did a little spring cleaning and say, what committees are in? What committees don't even exist? Who wants to be reappointed? Actually, I'm going to say, and this is, I mean, everyone just says, oh, the Board of Selectmen is against the Recreation Commission. But I just heard from Greer that we've now got a new application from, he's a young kid guy, a former student of mine is a civil engineer. I didn't ask him or anything, but he put one in. So we've got 3 people for 2 slots on the Recreation Commission. I'm just wondering, here's one example. Do we always simply reappoint whoever's there and you never get a chance to join a committee until someone resigns? It's like, I'd like John or Greer, or John and Greer, to just the 2 of them say, all right, I would like all 3 of those people to come in, give me 15 to 20 minutes, tell me what's your vision for this next year with COVID-19 and no money. What's your vision for recreation? And I don't mean Camp Kiwanee, I mean recreational programming. What's your vision and how do you contribute to that vision? And what's your vision for the next 3 years, which we're reappointing you for 3 years? What's your vision for the next 3 years of recreational programming? And how do you contribute to that? And I mean, we had said at one point we would interview people, and I think John has, and I know Mike and Mary did to some extent, interview before we say appoint. But I don't think we should be doing this just rubber stamp, rubber stamp, rubber stamp, no clue. Okay, so it's one of those things.
All right, so I think there's so there are, we've had this discussion before, I don't know if this whole group has, but I know traditionally the way that it was always done was that unless somebody affirmatively opted out, because I did ask this question when I first got elected, unless somebody affirmatively opts out, they are assumed to want to continue to be on it. I agree there's clearly some due diligence that needs to be done on this. That said, I'm a little bit concerned because some of these terms expire 6:30. And so if we're meeting on 6:30. So as long as this can be done by 6:30, I guess we won't have any lapse in when people are able to serve. But, you know, for instance, like I know the community preservation guys, the cultural council guys, the Plymouth County reuse guys, you know, they're actively meeting and serving, and presumably if they didn't want to serve would have given their resignation.
And likely John already knows them, but I'm telling you right now, because I know John is new and Greer is new. I'm not pinning this on them at all. I'm pinning this on prior boards of selectmen and prior town administrators who just said, rubber stamp. And this is the result. We've got pages of people, and I just know from going through this, some of these committees no longer exist. Some of these people, and so I think by next week, we should have a much smaller list that is a real list. And as far as the Recreation Commission is, after these last 3 meetings, I really do think John should interview all 3. And then I'm totally good with whatever John decides. But I think he needs to hear, what's your vision? I mean, we could do this. We had time to say, Matt Dyer, what is your vision now for Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee? What's going to happen in the next 3 years? And hear what he has to say. I'd love it if we did that for everybody, but that's not reasonable.
Okay, so that's a lot to unpack, as they say. So I think on the 2020, on the 200th anniversary, I agree. We've got to look at extending that date. We do have 2 resignations, which we'll get to in a minute. But I'm wondering, John, can you guys go back and look at the bylaw that created that committee? Because we might have to, or however we created it, it might have said it's just for 2020. And so we might need to just tweak that in order to extend their term. And also there's some on here that we don't appoint. For instance, we do not appoint finance committee members. That is the town moderator. So I don't know why we would have those guys on there. And fire, I don't know. There's some weird things on here, like the fire chief and the forest warden. Do they get appointed on this, even though we've entered into contracts with them? I don't know. I just don't remember them being on the list in prior years, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, at any rate, I know John and Greer really don't have much to do, so they got time on their hands to pull this together. But
they would just say
by next week, I'd like at least a somewhat smaller list and some assurance that these people are saying, yeah, I'm not 91 years old, blind, deaf, but I don't leave the house, which George was laughing. I mean, he thought it was funny, but it's also, it doesn't reflect well on the board. And I would like to think that our appointments reflected well on us and the future of Hanson.
By the way, that cable TV does actually, that cable TV committee does actually meet. There are people on it, but apparently he's not on their distribution list or something. So, but they definitely do meet. And I would hate to apply one set of rules to one committee or commission and not. So, I mean, are we saying we want to re-interview everybody that's on all of these committees to see if they still are, I don't know, have a vision, are passionate about it, are engaged? I hesitate to do this because we already have difficulty filling the committee openings that we have. So I don't want to push away, like, say, the Plymouth County Hospital reuse people.
Nope, I totally agree. All I'm asking is, like, if there are other applications sitting out there. I mean, we have had a couple issues this last year with applications which sat somewhere for a good amount of time, and we never moved on and weren't even told there were applications. I only just heard that there was another application for Rec Commission, which is why I threw them in. Unless there are people desperate to get on Plymouth County, no, I'm fine.
I just threw that one in there. I don't know, whatever other committee.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. But if there's someone else who's looking to apply, well, then I would give them consideration too, and let John and Greer, you know, I trust their judgment. I think, I haven't evaluated yet, but I think.
Okay, Mr. Dyer.
I think to turn around in 1 week is a little bit short notice, and especially with everything going on, I don't want to put any more on John and Greer's plate. So what I would recommend is maybe, just extend these appointments to the end of August. That way it gives us a little bit of time to rethink committees, as Wes was alluding to. I think we need to start thinking about bigger plans here in Hanson. We're buying up all this open space, but who's in charge of it? Are we going to put that into recreation? I think we really need to start having these discussions because we've been kicking this can for a couple of years now. So I think for right now, just to give us a little bit of breathing room, maybe tonight just extend these appointments until the end of August. That way we can all reach out, we can go through with a fine comb and go from there.
Okay. Could we take a hybrid approach? For instance, if there are ones that we know, like community preservation, like the Energy Committee, Plymouth County Reuse, there's some that are meeting actively, and these people are engaged, and they've got no interest in not being on that committee. Could we somehow have John and Greer go through, and at least we can take care of those, and then we can have the remainder where we've got to kind of comb and talk to them and figure out if they really want to be on it, or if we should even be the appointing authority. Is that making it more complicated for you, John, or easier? I don't know.
I'm talking over with Greer while you're discussing it, and we're going to need some help in order to get this done by next week. This is a tall order, so.
No, I think Matt's right. We've got to be real about this. You're getting us ready for town meeting. We've got a lot going on. We're thinking about reopening town hall and all the logistics around that, and a few other million things that you're working on. So I like Matt's idea of at least voting to extend it to August. And you know what? And if by August we still haven't quite got enough resolution, on this and clarity on it, then we can always extend to September. And, obviously we don't want to keep doing it month by month, but, we could always buy some more time if we needed to. Does it feel like if we gave you till like August, that might be more feasible, or?
I think, yeah, that would be very helpful.
Okay. All right. So I will entertain a motion.
So moved by Matt to extend the period, to extend the appointments until the end of August 2020.
August 31st.
Yep.
Okay, August 31st. Okay. Did I get a second on that? Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. I'll move to.
I'm sorry, Laura. John, has anyone applied for the Drainage Committee?
I did. I signed up for it.
Oh, thank God, Laura.
I'm into it.
No, that hasn't happened.
Yeah. Mr. Mitchell.
I think that we all can help John and Greer. Just looking at the list myself, I see 5 or 6 names myself that I know don't belong there. So I think we can all contribute and help them get this done by the end of August.
Yeah, Greer, would it be helpful to you if we just all kind of marked it up for what we know? Like if we just, we know these.
It would. Very
yes.
simple. It would.
All right.
That would be very helpful if you all could take your list, print it out. If you know something, write it down, and if you're able to scan them and email them to me, that would be incredibly helpful.
Okay, yeah, we could do that.
I don't know most of these people, so, and some of you may, like I think Kenny, you've been on Drainage Committee. Is that correct? You made a joke about it once.
No,
Jim Hickey's on the Drainage Committee.
Yeah, Jim's on it.
One of you,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, somehow Kenny got off it and I got on.
That's right.
That's called playing the rookie.
Laura and Matt will easily be able to say Plymouth County Final Committee is all set. Just go with it. And then John and Greer can just cut that off the list and say, okay, we don't have to deal with them. They'll be reappointed.
All right. So do you guys feel like we should give ourselves a little bit of a deadline to keep ourselves honest? Do you guys feel like you could do this by like next week just to get her that information so she can start cleaning things up? Okay, great. All right, so I have a motion and a second. I'm going to move to the roll call. Mr. Dyer,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
and Mr. Bloss,
Aye.
and Ms. Kemet, aye. Okay, great. That brings us to the state of the outreach. Oh, I'm sorry, resignations. Josh Singer and Ann Merlin from the 200th Anniversary Committee. Obviously, with regret, I will entertain a motion.
So moved, Wes Bloss.
Second.
Okay. Roll call. Mr. Dyer,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Bloss,
Aye.
and Ms. Kemet, aye. And I will say Ann Merlin was a shining star for the bicentennial celebration, so she will be missed. In terms of old business, state of outreach on override ballot question. Mr. Stanbrook, I believe you and Mr. Sullivan taped something, but I asked yesterday cable access when that might be available, and I think they said it would be available tonight for the first time on demand.
Yes, we taped it last Tuesday, Mr. Sullivan and myself, I don't know, by half an hour. I don't know how long I haven't seen the final product yet. Yeah, he said tonight was going to be when it goes live. So I obviously haven't seen it, but it's not an in-depth, 4-hour dive into the budget. It was pretty much trying to keep it up at up at the surface and with broad concepts and not a very not comprehensive in any way, but just talking about what's going on.
Okay, well, we thank you for doing that. We also thank Mr. Sullivan, and I look forward to seeing it. Regional school agreement update. I think we haven't heard anything. So still waiting for that committee to get back together again so we can negotiate that agreement. Unless you've heard anything, Mr. Stanbrook.
No, I haven't heard anything.
Mr. Mitchell, were you waving?
Yes. Under request notification from Parks and Fields, we missed that.
I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, yeah. Notification from Parks and Fields of placement of Connects box at McQuon or Indian Head Field for storage. Can you tell us about that, Mr. Mitchell?
Okay. So the first thing is Parks and Fields wants to replace the stairs at the old police station just because they're pulling away from the building, and Bob Curran will inspect it. The other thing that Parks and Fields wants to do is would like permission to put a Connex box at McQuon and Indian Head Field for the soccer and football to use as a storage facility. Currently, right now, there's a shed on the property, and the shed's in disrepair, and it needs to be torn down. So these Connex boxes would replace the sheds, and we'll remove the sheds. Once we put the boxes up, we'll pay. We're going to put a dumpster, and we'll pay to get rid of the existing sheds. And then we're also going to be replacing a section of fence up there that was damaged due to the recent storm. So we just kind of, because it's town property, we want to let you guys know what we're doing or get a vote of just to stand behind us.
And how is the work on the old police station being done? Is that volunteer work, but Mr. Curran is going to inspect it?
That's a great question. That's going to be done by Steve Graham of the Highway Department. So Parks and Fields will pay him overtime to rebuild that, but through Mr. Curran.
Okay. Okay. Did anybody have any questions about that?
All the parts.
Okay. Do we need to officially take a vote? Is that an acceptance of a donation in a weird way, Mr. Stanbrook? Because it's like donated like materials and labor, and then, the Connects, it's going to be on town property.
It can't hurt if you, I don't think it's absolutely required. Again, Kate could tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's absolutely required, but it can't hurt if you want to have a vote.
It's always safer to have a vote.
Okay, I will entertain a motion.
So moved by Matt.
So, second by Jim.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Dyer?
Aye, and thank you very much for the donations.
Yeah. Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr.
Thank you.
Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Bloss?
Aye.
And Ms. Kemet? Aye. Okay, great. And that brings us to the town administrator's report, Mr. Stanbrook.
So thank you. During this COVID-19 pandemic, the Board of Selectmen allowed me to sign on behalf of them whatever warrants have come in to be paid. So I have signed the following warrants on behalf of the Board of Selectmen since the last meeting. Dated June 11th, 2020, warrant 42 V6.11.2, a negative warrant of 1944.60. That was a vendor warrant, and that's just a reissue of stale checks that are more than 90 days old. A warrant dated 6/11/20, again, warrant 50, $224.65. Again, that's a vendor warrant. A warrant dated June 11th, 2020, warrant 50 PR for $162,223.03. That's a payroll warrant. A warrant dated June 11th, 2020, warrant 50 WH for $32,543.77. That's a payroll withholding warrant. A warrant dated June 18th, 2020, warrant 51 for $63,181.47. That's a vendor warrant. A warrant dated June 18th, 2020, warrant 51 PR for $151,711.98. That's a payroll warrant. A warrant dated June 18th, 2020, warrant 51 WH for $29,773.40. That's a payroll withholding warrant. A warrant dated June 18th, 2020, that's a treasurer collector void reissue warrant for $210. And again, that's a reissue of stale checks more than 90 days old. Another warrant finally for June 18th, 2020, again, a treasurer collector void reissue warrant number 2 for negative $1,357. Again, a reissue of stale checks. You also authorized me to sign on behalf of the Board of Selectmen end of the year transfers authorized under Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 33B. I have signed the following transfers. There are 4 of them. Transfer number FY20-01 for $27,500, and that's from water expenses to water indirect costs, and that was related to additional staff participating in the group insurance program that wasn't included in the original budget. Transfer number FY20-02 for $5,000. That's from communications salaries to communication expenses, and that was required dispatcher training, which wasn't budgeted in the fiscal year. Transfer number FY20-03 for $2,048. That's from Norfolk Agricultural School tuition line item to South Shore Regional Vocational Assessment line item. And that was because the final South Shore Voc assessment was higher than the budget that was in there. And finally, the last transfer so far is fiscal year 20-04. That was for $10,000. It's from public building expenses for $7,000 and planning board salaries for $3,000. And it went to town administrator salary line item of $7,000 and various departments for a total of $3,000. The $7,000 for town administrator salaries was buyback of accrued leave to the former town administrator, and also to pay for overlap for when I first came on and Mary stayed on to help me. I think that was in January. And also the $3,000 is spread out over 6 other departments because we have 1 extra leap day in the budget that wasn't budgeted. So that's it there on things that I've signed on your behalf. Last week we had a reopening. This is on town hall reopening. Last week we're going to try a dry run because we were going to have voter registration anyway at the town hall. It was going to be our test. We were going to have an opening, see how it worked out. The public was going to be required to wear masks while in town hall and observe social distancing, hand sanitizer guidelines. We had everything ready to go. Unfortunately, no one showed up from the public to sign up for voter registration. So we couldn't test it to see whether it would have worked or not. So I met with Mr. Amato, our Board of Health agent, earlier today We're going to come up with some other way to test it. Maybe have again a soft opening or whatever they're calling of town hall. I mean, we also talked at our department head meeting today. There was a strong sentiment for allowing the public to come in by appointment only. And again, I'll talk to Mr. Amato more about it, and that may be a way to go. Trying to ease into it somehow, but unfortunately, it didn't work as planned when no one shows up from the public. We couldn't test it. And finally, last June 10th, I attended the grand opening of the Regional Old Colony Communications Center, or what's called the ROC, in Duxbury. It was a very impressive building, very state-of-the-art setup for the communications, and it will serve the region well going forward. It was well attended. They gave tours of 10 people each and went through the building, and I was there with the several people that I knew that are from other regional communication centers. That either they're trying to get them going, or they are in the middle of getting going, and they were trying to get pointers of how to set things up. So the ROC looked very good, and it looked like they had done a great job there in Duxbury. So again, if anyone wants to know anything more about the ROC, again, it's ROCCC. You can just Google that or go to www.town.duxbury.ma.us /regional-old-colony-communications-center. And then finally, I'd just like to urge everyone to come out and vote this Saturday from 10 to 5 at the middle school. Let your voice be heard. If that's what's all about here in America, is getting out and telling people what you think should be done, and the best way to do that, I think, is to vote. So thank you.
All right, thank you, John. That was a great report. Has everybody on the board been to the Regional Dispatch Center? Yeah, okay. Mr. Bloss, have you been?
To the former, not to the newest.
Okay, all right. Yeah, well, good point. You're right. I don't know if any of us have been to the newest except for John. So maybe at some point, Mr. Stanbrook, we should try to make that happen in small groups, socially distancing, obviously, at some point in the future. With that, I've got a vote to approve the May 22nd and 26th open session meeting minutes. I don't know if everybody had a chance to review them, and if so, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll move to the vote. Mr. Dyer?
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Bloss?
Aye.
And Ms. Kemet. And that brings us to adjournment, and I will entertain a motion.
So moved by Matt.
Second by Kenny.
Okay, and roll call vote. Mr. Dyer?
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Bloss?
Aye.
And Ms. Kemet. Okay, aye, and thank you guys, and hope to see you on the other side. Thanks, John, and thanks, Greer.
And 4.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Laura, good meeting.
All right, thanks. Take care, guys.
Good night.